The power went out in a biker garage after midnight. No sparks, just silence. By morning, a 14-year-old boy was standing inside, holding a burnt coil and saying something that didn't belong there.
I fixed it, but someone wanted it to fail.
He wasn't just asking for help. What he knew would drag an entire town's secrets into the light. The garage went silent just after midnight. Not the comfortable quiet of a shutdown, but the abrupt kind that makes your spine straighten. One moment the overhead fluorescents were humming, the backup compressor wheezing in the corner, and Norman was underneath a Harley Softail cursing at a stripped bolt. The next moment, nothing. Just darkness and the metallic ping of cooling metal. Curtis heard the silence from his office in the back. He was balancing the books, trying to figure out how they'd cover the insurance deductible on 3 bikes and still afford the permits for next month's charity ride. When the lights cut, he sat there in the dark, waiting for the backup generator to kick in like it always did. Didn't. By morning, half the crew had shown up expecting answers. Miles was the first one in, coffee in hand, and he stopped dead when he saw the side door hanging open. Not forced, just open like someone had walked out and forgotten to close it behind them. Inside, crouched beside the old Onan generator in the storage bay, was a kid. Skinny, wearing faded jeans and a faded Metallica shirt that hung off one shoulder. His hands were black with grease, and he held a burnt coil in his palm, studying it. Miles didn't say anything. He just stood there, one hand still on the doorframe, staring. The kid looked up, with dirt smudged across his cheek, and eyes that didn't blink enough. "I fixed your generator," he said. His voice didn't shake. "But someone cut your wires on purpose last night. Same way they did to my dad." Curtis came through the door behind Miles, still holding his mug. He stopped mid-step when he saw the boy's face. "Beck," Curtis said quietly. Not a question. The kid nodded. "Alex." Miles looked between them. "Rick's kid." "Yeah." Curtis set his mug down on a workbench. "Where's your mother, Alex?" "Dead. 3 years now." Alex wiped his hands on his jeans, but the grease just smeared. "Living with my uncle Lenny out past the rail yard." Curtis knew Lenny like everyone around. Meant well when sober, which wasn't often. "How'd you get in here?" Miles asked. Alex pointed toward the loading dock. "Back window doesn't latch right. Heard the generator go out from the road. Figured I'd take a look. In the middle of the night. Wasn't sleeping anyway." Norman appeared from the garage floor, wiping his hands on a rag. He looked at Alex, then at the generator, which was now humming quietly in the corner. "Kid got it running?" "Looks like it," Curtis said. Alex stood up, still holding the burnt coil. He was shorter than Miles had thought, underfed in that way that doesn't show until you really look. "You said someone cut the wires," Curtis said. "Show me." Alex walked over to the breaker panel on the wall. His bare feet made no sound on the concrete. He opened the panel door and pointed to a section of wiring near the bottom. The insulation was blackened, the copper wire underneath exposed and severed clean. "Neutral line," Alex said. "You cut it there, the system tries to compensate. Overloads without sparking right away. Takes a few hours. Looks like equipment failure." Miles leaned in. The cut was clean, deliberate. Not frayed. Not worn. "How do you know this?" Curtis asked. "Because they did the same thing to my dad's site last year." Alex pulled a piece of cardboard from his back pocket. It was folded into quarters, edges soft from handling. He unfolded it carefully. On it was a hand-drawn electrical diagram. Not neat but accurate. Labels in cramped handwriting, arrows showing current flow, sections marked with excess. "This is how they said he did it," Alex said. "The warehouse fire. They claimed he rigged the system to overload and burn out the records room. But he didn't. Someone else did, and they used his design to make it look like him." Curtis took the cardboard, holding it up to the light. The diagram was detailed, specific. Whoever drew this understood electrical systems in a way most mechanics never would. "You draw this?" Norman asked. Alex nodded. "After they arrested him, I went through everything he taught me. Tried to figure out how it could have happened." "And you think the same person hit us?" "I know they did." Alex pointed to a section of the diagram. "See this? That's where you bypass the breaker without triggering the failsafe. You have to know the load capacity and the delay timing. Most people don't. My dad did because he designed half the systems in this town back when he was working commercial. Miles looked at Curtis. Rick was solid. I know. Curtis handed the cardboard back to Alex. Your dad taught you all this? Some. I picked up the rest. Alex folded the diagram carefully and slid it back into his pocket. He used to take me on jobs when I was little. I'd watch him work. Remember how he did things. You go to school? Norman asked. Alex shook his head. Not since he got arrested. Lenny can't get me there. And I can't. He trailed off, looking at the floor. Can't what? Curtis asked gently. Read most things. Words get jumbled. But I can remember diagrams, layouts, how things fit together. He looked back up. I know that doesn't make sense. Makes perfect sense to me, Norman said. I can't spell worth a damn, but I can rebuild a transmission blindfolded. Alex's mouth twitched, brief. Curtis studied the kid, thinking. Rick Beck had been one of them once. Not a rider, but close enough. He'd built their tools trailer, kept their generators running, even pulled Norman out of a fuel fire one summer when a line ruptured and nobody else moved fast enough. Then Rick got clean, stepped back, wanted to raise his kid away from the life. When the charges came down, most of the club figured it was a relapse. Some ugly backslide. They'd sent a card to the jail, made a few calls, but nobody pushed. Nobody asked the hard questions. Now Curtis was looking at Rick's son with a story that didn't sit right. You hungry? Curtis asked. Alex hesitated, then nodded. Come on, we'll get you something. Then we're gonna talk about who's been cutting wires in my town. Alex ate without pausing, fork moving in steady rhythm. Tina, Norman's old lady, had brought over a plate of scrambled eggs and toast, and the kid worked through it barely looking up. When he finished, he folded the napkin and set it beside the plate. Curtis spread a map of the town across the table in the clubhouse kitchen. Red circles marked their properties. The garage, the storage unit on 5th, the lot where they staged trucks for events. Charity rides in 3 weeks, Curtis said. We're hauling supplies to the VA hospital, running a poker rally, got sponsors lined up. Biggest thing we do all year. Miles tapped the map. We've had problems. Small stuff. Delayed inspections. Our primary truck got flagged for emissions even though we just had it certified. Could be coincidence, Norman said, but he didn't sound convinced. Alex leaned over the map, studying it. His finger traced a route from the garage to the storage unit, then to the staging lot. Where do you keep your backup equipment? Warehouse off Industrial Boulevard, Miles said. Why? Check the panel there. Main junction, not the breaker box. Look for cuts on the ground wire. Curtis exchanged a look with Miles. You think they already hit it? I think they're testing weak points. Alex pulled out his cardboard diagram again, flipping it over. The back was covered in pencil scratches, annotations, rough sketches. When they went after my dad, they didn't just sabotage one site. They hit 3 different locations over 2 months. Made it look like his work was sloppy, like he was cutting corners. But he wasn't, Miles said. He was the one who found the problem. That's why they needed him gone. Alex tapped the map. Your charity ride brings attention. Money. Permits mean city inspections, which means records. If someone wanted to bury something, they'd need you to look unreliable. Tina stood in the doorway, arms crossed. That's a hell of a theory for a kid. It's what happened to my dad. Alex's voice stayed level, but his jaw tightened. He found faulty wiring in a city contract job. Refused to sign off on it. 2 weeks later, the warehouse burned, and he was the only one who knew the system well enough to have rigged it. Who testified against him? Guy named Todd Ellerby. Used to work with my dad on commercial projects. Said he saw my dad near the warehouse the night before the fire. Said my dad had been acting paranoid, talking about conspiracies. Miles went still. Ellerby. You know him? Curtis asked. He used to ride with us. 10, maybe 12 years back. Miles's voice went flat. Left under bad circumstances. Embezzled from the club fund. Nearly cost us the land lease. Disappeared after that. Where is he now? Alex asked. Last I heard, he was working for the city. Infrastructure division. Miles looked at Curtis. Logistics officer or some title like that. Alex pulled another piece of paper from his pocket, this one torn from a notebook. He'd written a list in cramped letters, some of the words misspelled but legible enough. Dates, locations, incidents. This is everything that went wrong before my dad got arrested, he said. Equipment failures, delayed deliveries, inspection problems, all on jobs where the city was involved. Curtis studied the list. The pattern was there if you looked close enough. Subtle. Spread out just enough to seem like bad luck instead of sabotage. We've been having the same issues, Tina said quietly. Thought it was just Murphy's Law. It's not. Alex folded the paper again. They're setting you up the same way. When your event fails, it'll look like poor planning. Like you can't be trusted with permits or public safety. And if there's an investigation into city contracts, you'll be the easy target. Miles walked to the window, looking out at the lot where 2 bikes sat in various states of repair. Why us? We're not big enough to matter. You matter if you're visible, Alex said. Charity rides get press. People trust you. If you go down, nobody asks questions about where the real money went. Curtis sat back in his chair, thinking. Rick Beck had always been sharp, the kind of guy who saw problems before they happened. Looked like his kid had inherited that, along with the bad luck of being right when powerful people wanted him to be wrong. All right, Curtis said. We checked the warehouse. If Alex is right about the ground wire, we go from there. They found it an hour later. Clean cut, same placement, hidden behind the panel where you wouldn't see it unless you knew what to look for. Norman cursed under his breath. Miles just stared at it, jaw working. Alex crouched beside the panel, tracing the wiring with one finger. Next they'll hit your relay station near the staging lot. Maybe the bridge switchboard if they want to block your route. When? Curtis asked. Soon. They'll want everything in place before you're too close to the event date. Gives them plausible deniability. Miles pulled out his phone. I'll put someone on watch. Won't help, Alex said. They're not doing this themselves. They're hiring it out, probably through someone who knows the systems. You need to prove the pattern, not catch someone in the act. Tina looked at Curtis. Kids thinking 3 steps ahead. Yeah. Curtis watched Alex sketch another diagram on the back of his hand in ballpoint pen, mapping out potential failure points. He is. Alex glanced up, catching Curtis's expression. My dad taught me to see how things connect. Said most people only look at what's broken. But if you want to fix something, you have to understand what it was supposed to do. Smart man, Norman said. He is. Alex stood, wiping his hands on his jeans again. And he's sitting in prison because nobody believed him when it mattered. The room went quiet. Outside, an engine turned over, coughed, caught. A radio played low through the walls. Curtis made a decision. You're staying here tonight. We've got a cot in the back office. Tomorrow we start mapping this whole thing out, and you're going to teach us how to see what you see. Alex nodded once, careful and small. Miles's daughter Lena showed up late morning with a laptop bag and a determination that didn't ask permission. She sat up at the kitchen table without asking permission, opening files while Alex watched from the doorway. My dad says you've got a theory, she said, not looking up from the screen. Alex stepped closer. Not a theory, a pattern. Then show me. He laid out his cardboard diagrams, the notebook pages, everything he'd been tracking since his father's arrest. Lena typed while he talked, translating his sketches into a digital timeline. Locations, dates, failures. The screen filled with data points that started to form a shape. There, Alex said, pointing. That's when the first complaint got filed against my dad. 2 days after he refused to sign off on the warehouse electrical. Lena pulled up a different file. I called in a favor. Got some public records from the DA's office. Your dad's case file. Alex went very still. How'd you manage that? Friend from college works at the courthouse. She owed me. Lena scrolled through scanned documents. Here's the testimony transcript. Ellerby's statement. Miles leaned over her shoulder, reading. The words were clinical, precise. Todd Ellerby claimed he'd seen Rick Beck near the warehouse late at night, acting erratic. Said Rick had been talking about conspiracies, about people trying to silence him. The testimony painted a picture of someone unstable, paranoid. Convenient, Lena muttered. Make the whistleblower sound crazy before anyone hears what he's actually saying. Alex's hands were shaking. He shoved them in his pockets. What about the digital logs? The ones that showed the wiring configuration. Lena clicked through more files. Says here the original logs were corrupted. Technical glitch during evidence transfer. They had to rely on secondary documentation. Which could be altered, Miles said. Which was definitely altered. Alex moved to the table, tracing a line on Lena's screen. My dad backed up everything on external drives. He was obsessive about it. If those logs got corrupted, someone did it on purpose. Lena pulled up another window. I've got shell company filings here. Nonprofits registered in the past 2 years. All connected to city infrastructure contracts. Want to guess who's on the board of 3 of them? Ellerby, Miles said. And 2 guys from a rival club, the Iron Cross. They've been sniffing around our territory, trying to edge in on our supply routes. Lena turned the laptop so they could see the names. This isn't just about framing your dad, Alex. This is about money. City contracts funneled through fake charities, skimmed off the top, and anyone who gets close gets buried. Alex stared at the screen. The pieces were connecting faster than he could process. His father hadn't just stumbled onto bad wiring. He'd found a pipeline, and they'd destroyed him to protect it. Where's Ellerby now? Curtis asked from the doorway. Nobody had heard him come in. City Hall, probably, Lena said. He's got an office in the infrastructure division. Handles logistics for public works projects. Including permits, Miles said quietly. Including permits. Curtis crossed his arms. Which means he knows about our charity ride. Knows the routes, the timeline, everything we submitted. Alex looked up. He's the one coordinating the sabotage. Probably hired the Iron Cross to do the physical work while he handles the paper trail. When your event fails, he writes the report. Makes it look like negligence. You lose your permits, maybe face fines. Meanwhile, the contracts keep flowing. And my dad rots in prison for a fire he didn't set, Alex added, his voice tight. Lena's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then looked at her father. That's my friend at the courthouse. She says there's something else in the file. An addendum note about dismissed evidence. What kind of evidence? Miles asked. Rick Beck's original testimony. He tried to tell them about the contract scheme, the shell companies. The judge ruled it inadmissible because it wasn't directly related to the arson charge. Lena's jaw set. They didn't just frame him. They silenced him legally. Curtis walked to the window. The kid had been living in a scrap trailer, trying to prove his father's innocence with hand-drawn diagrams. The club had let Rick down when it mattered. Assumed guilt because it was easier than asking hard questions. We're not making that mistake again, Curtis said, turning back to the room. Lena, can your courthouse friend get us copies of everything? The dismissed testimony, the corrupted logs, all of it. Already asked. She's working on it. Good. Curtis looked at Miles. How fast can you trace those shell companies? Find out where the money's actually going. Give me a day, maybe 2. Do it. Curtis turned to Alex. You said they'll hit the relay station next. When? Alex closed his eyes, thinking. Soon. They'll want it done before you're a week out from the event. Gives them time to process the failure report and issue the shutdown order. Then we set a trap, Norman said from the hallway. Let them come. Catch them in the act. Won't stick, Alex said. They'll just hire different guys. We need proof that connects back to Ellerby. Otherwise, it's just vandalism. Lena's fingers flew across the keyboard. What if we don't catch them? What if we just document everything? Build the case ourselves and go public before they can shut us down. Curtis's expression hardened. I like how you think. The city's infrastructure chief sent the email just after dawn. Event permit suspended pending safety review. Effective immediately. Curtis read it twice, then handed his phone to Miles without saying a word. They're moving faster than we thought, Miles said. Alex was already at the table, surrounded by printouts Lena had brought the night before, footage timestamps, GPS logs, eyewitness statements. He'd been organizing them since before sunrise, arranging everything in sequence like pieces of a puzzle only he could see complete. "Doesn't matter," Alex said, not looking up. "We've got everything we need." Tina set up camera equipment in the garage. Lena tested audio levels while Alex rehearsed in the corner. "You don't have to do this," Curtis told him. "We can find another way." "There isn't another way." Alex met his eyes. "They buried my dad because nobody listened. If I can make people listen now, that's what matters." The stream went live just before noon. Lena introduced herself calmly, explaining the charity event cancellation and why the Steelbound was challenging it. Then she brought Alex into frame. He looked younger on camera, exhaustion visible under the lights. But when he started talking, his voice didn't waver. "My name is Alex Beck. 8 months ago, my father Rick Beck was convicted of arson. They said he sabotaged a warehouse to destroy evidence. But he didn't. He found evidence of fraud, and someone silenced him using the same electrical systems he'd designed." Alex held up his cardboard diagram. "This is how it was done. You cut the neutral line here, bypass the failsafe here, and create an overload that looks like equipment failure. It takes specific knowledge. My father had that knowledge because he built these systems. So did the person who framed him. He walked through it methodically, each cut wire, each delayed inspection, each convenient failure that built the case against Rick. Then he overlaid it with what had been happening to the Steelbound. The same pattern, the same methods." Lena switched to the security footage. Grainy but clear enough. Timestamps showing trucks being stopped for violations that didn't exist. Inspectors arriving at sites where no inspections had been scheduled. "The man who testified against my father is Todd Ellerby," Alex continued. "He works for the City Infrastructure Division now. He's also connected to shell companies receiving city contracts. The same companies that hired the people sabotaging the Steelbound's equipment." Miles appeared on camera next, explaining the money trail through shell nonprofits and the Iron Cross's paid sabotage. "We're not asking you to take our word for it," Lena said, looking directly at the camera. "We're showing you the receipts, the timestamps, the pattern. Decide for yourselves." The stream stayed live for 40 minutes. By the time they signed off, the view count had climbed past 8,000. Comments flooded in, some supportive, some skeptical, others demanding investigations. The lawyer showed up that afternoon. Her name was Patricia Vance, and she'd worked with the Steelbound years back on their land lease dispute. She'd left corporate law since then, taken on civil rights cases, the kind of work that paid poorly but mattered. "That was either brilliant or incredibly stupid," she said, settling into a chair across from Curtis. "Possibly both." "Will it work?" Curtis asked. "The city's already backpedaling. They lifted the permit suspension an hour ago. Claimed it was a clerical error." Patricia pulled out her tablet. "And Ellerby's been put on administrative leave pending an internal review. Someone downtown is panicking." "What about my father?" Alex asked from the doorway. Patricia looked at him, her expression softening slightly. "I filed for an emergency hearing to review the evidence exclusions in his original trial. The dismissed testimony, the corrupted logs. If the judge agrees there were procedural violations, we can get a new trial. Maybe get him released pending investigation." "How long?" "Weeks, maybe less." The video helped. Public pressure makes things move faster. Alex nodded once, controlled and careful. But his hands were shaking again. 3 weeks later, Rick Beck walked out of county lockup into afternoon sunlight. He was thinner than Alex remembered, grayer at the temples, but his eyes were the same, sharp and steady. Alex stood beside Curtis's truck in the parking lot, wearing clothes that actually fit now. Tina had taken him shopping. Miles had helped him study for his GED. Norman had shown him how to rebuild a carburetor just because the kid seemed interested. Rick stopped when he saw his son. Rick crossed the distance and pulled Alex into a hug that lasted. The Steelbound cleared out a room in the machine shed. Nothing fancy, heat, a real bed, a window that latched. Rick and Alex moved in that evening. Lenny came by too, sober this time, accepting the club's offer to help him get into a recovery program. Miles gave Alex a busted CB radio to fix. Tina enrolled him in GED classes. On Alex's 15th birthday, Rick stood in the garage doorway watching his son rebuild the secondary generator from scratch, making it better than the original. Someone asked how he'd managed to figure it all out. Alex shrugged, glancing at his father. It was already working, he said. Just needed someone to believe it still could. Alex didn't just fix a generator. He rebuilt trust in a system that had been rigged to fail. What would you have done in Curtis's place? Let us know in the comments below. And if this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe to embrace the journey. For more stories that remind us some systems aren't broken, they're just waiting for someone brave enough to rewire them. See you in our next video.